When I was growing up, I was always a really good athlete. I was the fastest. I could run the longest and still maintain speed. And I used to race bicycles and I swam competitively. I actually got third in junior Olympics in swimming. So I was always in great shape without a lot of effort. And then as I got older, we get more sedentary and I started my own business and it became some issues. It got stressful and my habits began to change just to balance the stress. My diet changed somewhat. My exercise habits diminished and then stopped. The home I lived in, the bedrooms were upstairs. So as I began to walk upstairs to my bedroom, I noticed I had to lay down on my bed just from being tired from walking upstairs. I'm going, golly, how did I let my body get out of such poor condition? I can't believe it. So I said, well, I got to get back in shape. I got to get back in shape. So I decided I would hop on my bike and start riding my bike. And here in the Texas Hill Country, it's known for its hills and all that. Not like mountain, but pretty good hills. And I started down the road and started up a hill. I started to feel faint. I actually collapsed into the ditch and cars began to stop, asked me if I was okay. And I felt like I just raised my arm up in the ditch with my thumb up so people would know I was okay so they wouldn't stop. After about 20 minutes, I finally was able to get on my bike and I coasted down the hill and I had to walk up the other hill to my house. I said, okay, so much for trying to ride my bike. Let me go spike into a jog. I had the same experience when I jogged. I actually fainted and collapsed when I was trying to run. I said, well, okay, let me start walking because walking out here is good exercise. So I started walking and it was tiring, but I could do it. And I said, well, let me start playing golf and walking the golf course during my golf bag. So I started doing that, playing golf, and it was difficult. To walk 18 holes carrying my bag, it was tough. I'm a very spiritually oriented person. I believe in the little voice inside us, the connection with God or spirit or whatever you want to call it. I was on the 14th hole of the golf course. There's two guys way up ahead, and a little voice said, catch those two guys. So I didn't hit the ball. I just started walking down the golf course. And by the time I got to those guys, they'd finished that hole. We're on the next hole. So I walked over and said, hey, you guys, mind if I play with you? And it was 16. So he said, sure. We had our shots on 16, finished 17. When we hit 18, we hit our drives and we walked down the crew. And I said, guys, I'm really wiped. I'm so sorry. I've got to take a break here. I'm not in really very good shape. And you guys go ahead and hit up to the green and putt out. It's been really nice sharing this time with you. But they waited for me when I finally got to the green and I hit my shot. I went over to shake one of the guy's hands and he says, I was a medic in Nam. I'm looking at you. You've got a problem with your liver. You need to go to the doctor. And it was like, where'd that come from? That was the first time I actually thought something may actually be wrong with me. So I did not have any health insurance. So I got health insurance. And after about a month, I went ahead and scheduled a physical with the doctor. And I went in for the physical and I got home. And about 30 minutes after I got home, the doctor's nurse calls me and she says, well, the doctor's very concerned with some tests and he scheduled an appointment with you in the morning with a gastroenterologist. And I said, well, what test? What's wrong? She said, it's your blood test. It's your hemoglobin. I said, what about my hemoglobin? She said, it's 5.7. I said, 5.7, what's that mean? So she faxed over blood test results. Well, normal is like 14 to 18 for an adult male. So 5.7, I'd lost 2/3 of the red blood in my body. And I didn't know that. No wonder I was so tired. No wonder I felt faint. The hemoglobin carries oxygen from the lungs to the cells. I was literally suffocating. Oxygen takes the ATP to create energy. And I had no energy. I couldn't do it. So I went in the next day to see the gastroenterologist. And he said, you're probably bleeding internally. So he quickly got me in for a colonoscopy, and it revealed I had a grapefruit-sized tumor in my colon that apparently had been bleeding for years. It had completely encircled my colon, and the opening in my colon was now less than the size of the dime. He had no indication, and I didn't see blood in my stool or anything. Not that I was looking for it, but it was nothing apparent that would have alerted me you've got something going on inside your body. Then I got CT scan, and it showed the size of the tumor, and it showed cancer in lymph nodes, and an ultrasound and some other tests revealed spots and lesions in my liver. The colon liver are connected with the portal vein. And so that's why when colon cancer, it moves outside the colon wall into the lymph nodes, and then the portal vein takes it to the liver, and then you got stage 4 colon and liver cancer, which is no bueno. I hadn't got the biopsy back, but it was apparent to the gastroenterologist that I had cancer. That night I went home and got on the internet, and there wasn't a lot out there. I came across Otto Warburg, and I discovered in 1931 he won the Nobel Prize for his discovery of the primary cause of cancer. My major was in philosophy. I'm pretty good at reading and understanding predicates and causal things and really digging deep. And when something is life or death, I've got the patience to really find out what's going on here. So I read Otto Warburg and began to study his discovery. In 1966, he gave a Nobel laureate talk, and he said that you need to increase the speed of the hemoglobin in the body to increase the amount of oxygen moving through. And since I had no hemoglobin, I figured, hey, I need to get some hemoglobin. So how do I do that? And then I Googled again. Hans Fischer won the Nobel Prize in 1930, a German chemist, for his discovery of the similarity between hemoglobin and chlorophyll. If you were to Google hemoglobin chlorophyll molecular similarity, you'll see they're identical, except the central binding element in hemoglobin is iron, making it red. Chlorophyll, magnesium, making it green. So I figured, hey, I just need a lot of green juice. And then I came across Ann Wigmore, who was a big advocate of wheatgrass juice. The local health food store was making wheatgrass, and a guy was bringing wheatgrass in flats. They were throwing them away. I said, hey, give me those flats. I'll regrow the stuff. So I bought the same trays he was growing them in. I went to the restaurant supply and got the same trays. So I had like 25 flats of wheatgrass growing on my back porch. I was drinking 5 to 6 ounces of wheatgrass a day. That's a lot of wheatgrass. And then I bought a single auger juicer because the Champion juicer I had wouldn't juice greens very well. I bought a single auger juicer and began juicing greens. I'd already gone and seen a surgeon and an oncologist. And I walked into the surgeon's office and he put my CT scan up on a light board and showed, there's your tumor, there's your opening, that's the size of the dime, there's the cancer in your lymph nodes. And he pulled up the ultrasound showing, and here's your spots, lesions in your liver. You've got stage 4 colon liver cancer. If you don't do anything, you'll be dead in less than 6 months. And even if you do everything I can recommend, the odds that you survive in 5 years is still less than 20%. I did my own research, and stage 4 colon and liver cancer is less than 20% survival in 5 years. Then he called his nurse in, and she went away. He came back with a piece of paper, and then we were sitting in his patient room. There was a little kind of a table there. He took the paper and he slid it over with a pen on it. And he said, my nurse just checked. There's space in the operating room next Tuesday. All I need is your okay right here. We can get started. And he slides the paper over with the pen. And I'm thinking, I wasn't ready for that. But then I heard this little voice inside me, that little voice again. You haven't even given your body a chance. It kept repeating over and over and over. You haven't even given your body a chance. And it was true. I hadn't given my body a chance. So I said to the surgeon, has anybody ever listened to all you've just told me and told you no, thank you? I'm not interested. And he said, yes. So I asked what I thought was the next logical question. So what happened to them? They're all dead, sliding the paper over again with the pen. It's hard to say no under those conditions. I hadn't given my body a chance. And so if I had that inner voice, I stood up and I said, I need some time to think this over. And I shook his hand and I walked out. But I knew I was gone. Before I left his office, I made an appointment in 10 days. I said, I'd give myself 10 days. And then I made an appointment with the oncologist in 10 days also. I made them back to back. And then back to me starting the wheatgrass and green juice thing. So I had 10 days. I started doing wheatgrass juice, green juice, and I got a hold of Nutrex in Hawaii with spirulina. They sent me out to this Bill's health food store so I'd have a commercial account so I could order cases of spirulina. And I got 6 pounds of spirulina, and I started taking about 30 grams of spirulina a day in my juice. So I was doing wheatgrass juice, green juice, and about 30 grams of spirulina. After about 3 or 4 days, after I'd seen the surgeon and oncologist, and I made appointments for 10 days, as I started walking up my stairs again, no, I didn't have to lay down. And I was going, wow. After about the 5th or 6th day, I was really beginning to think something's going on here. On the 7th day, I was feeling great compared to how I had been feeling. Now I began reading about Max Gerson. There's a great PDF online of a talk he gave in 1956 while he was on vacation in Escondido, California. He goes into his protocol. He goes into everything. Reading that along with Warburg really began to make me think, hey, there's a path here. So on the 7th day, I knew in 3 more days I was going to see the surgeon oncologist until I'm in or I'm out. But I didn't know what was going on. So I made another appointment on the 8th day with the same doctor that had done the blood test. And so on the 9th day, I went in and I got another blood test. I remember sitting there in the office. And thankfully, they had a machine there. They could do the test right there on site. Obviously, the results were great. And that taught me that the human body has an incredible capacity to heal. But even more important than seeing those results was knowing that what I was doing was really working. At that point, I was 100% certain that I was going to be cancer-free. I didn't know quite how yet, but I know if I went this far, I was going to go far enough and I was going to be cancer-free. I had no doubts. And it was that belief, that certainty. I think that was a big part. The next day, the 10th day, I take these 2 blood tests into the surgeon. And I walk in, he says, ready for surgery? And I said, I'm not so sure, take a look at this. And I hand him both the blood tests. And he says, I am so glad you got a transfusion. And I said, well, I didn't get a transfusion. What'd you do? So I tried to tell him the science about Hans Fischer. He just started shaking his head and he said, that's impossible. There has to be some sort of mistake. No, that's impossible. And he handed me the test. It was right there. So I left the surgeon and I drove over to the oncologist. And I walked in and I slept in the patient room and he came in. And before I could say anything, he started saying, hey, I checked with MD Anderson in Houston. There's a surgeon there that can do a liver resection to help you with your liver. He started talking to me about chemotherapy and all that. And then he said, oh, by the way, when's your surgery? Because he knew I just come from the surgeon. I said, I didn't schedule the surgery. And to be honest with you, I'm not so sure I'm going to. Take a look at this. And I had him both the blood tests. And of course, he was not only an oncologist, but a hematologist. So he was a blood expert. I could see his eyes going back and forth. And then he began looking at the RDW and all these other things. And he basically said to me, not only have you almost doubled your hemoglobin, but the size of your red blood cells is larger, the density of the hemoglobin is larger, and you have more cells. So when you have more red blood cells, they have more hemoglobin and they're bigger. If you get 30% of this, 30% of that, 30% of that, pretty much you got double the hemoglobin. And he said, well, what'd you do? And I told him about the science between the similarity between hemoglobin and chlorophyll. And he said, I've seen things I'd have to call a miracle. I'm just going to put this over to that category. He wasn't so disrespectful as the surgeon, or let's say so skeptical. I said, I think I'm onto something. I'm not quite sure exactly where it's going to lead me, but I'm not going to do what you think I should do. But even though I'm not going to, would you please still see me every 3 or 4 weeks? Run the tests on to be sure I just don't go off and kill myself. Would you please do that? So I knew I needed him to order tests. I can't just call the radiologist and say, hey, do this, do that. I'll say this about Western medicine. The diagnostics are very, very good. I read more about Garrison and the Garrison protocol. I started incorporating coffee enemas. I also did a lot of research on herbs. There's an herb called, I think it's called Sangre de Grado, which means dragon's blood, which the South American Indians use it to coagulate blood. So I started doing water enemas with that to try to help with my bleeding tumor. And then I started doing enemas with garlic and with habaneros. And then I would do 3 enemas, one with clean, one with the herbs, and then one with coffee. I did that 4 times a day. I came across Dr. William Donald Kelly. I read his book, One Answer Cancer. I found that online for free. I began thinking, I'm going to incorporate proteolytic enzymes too, because this made a lot of sense. When the tumor got bigger, I said, well, I've got this thing in my body to be thinking I want. 7 months later, I called the surgeon back and I said, okay, I'm ready for the surgery. And he admitted later, he thought for sure I was a goner. He said he thought I was dead. When he opened me up, he was shocked. Everything was clean. There was one large calloused mass, which he cut, checked my liver and everything else with. Then about 6 months later, I started having this abdominal pain and it was discomforting. And then one morning, I called the surgeon at 3 a.m. He called me back about 4 a.m. I said, I'm in extreme pain. He said, look, go on down to the emergency room. I'm going to call them. They'll run tests. I'll be there about 6:30 in the morning and we'll go forward from there. Went down there, they did the test, did a CT scan. It came about 6:30. He said, basically, where I sewed you together, it came apart. And I had severe sepsis. I said to him, I got a pretty busy day today. Can you give me some pain pills? Let's take care of this tomorrow. You won't be here tomorrow. It was that serious. He opened me up again, cleaned me out, and sewed me up again. And then about 5 months after that, I was lifting some boxes and tore all my stitches. Then I had to have a hernia operation to repair that. I am firmly convinced that if I had just stayed the course, I wouldn't have had to have 3 surgeries. Well, the 3rd surgery was because I basically was lifting things I shouldn't have been lifting. That was on me. That was 21 years ago.